Hey friends, well welcome to Q on Q. We are glad you are with us this week. First, I want to apologize. I know it has been a while since we have recorded an episode. The truth is, fall got ahead of us and the podcast took a back seat, which it shouldn't have, and week after week seemed to go by, and here we are, back at it. Well, today we are wrapping up our Going to the Movies series that was started what seems like so many weeks ago. If you haven't heard the previous ones, I hope you will go back and take a listen. If you have been listening regularly through the series, I hope that you've enjoyed them and have been inspired by these topics as much as I have. Well, this week, we are going to take a look at the 1998 film, The Truman Show. Now, this movie may not have been as popular as some of the other ones that we've covered, but it's got a pretty impactful story. The film centers on the life of Truman Burbank. He's played by Jim Carrey, an ordinary man living an ideal suburban life, but he's unaware that his entire world is an elaborate TV set. Truman's every move has been broadcast live since birth to a global audience without his knowledge as part of a 24/7 reality show. Everybody around him, including his friends and family, are actors, and all of Truman's experiences have been carefully scripted. Over time, Truman begins to notice oddities in his surroundings, such as the perfectly timed product placements and bizarre behaviors from those around him, which lead him to question the reality of his world. As Truman grows increasingly suspicious, he attempts to break free from these artificial constraints that he's living. The show's producer does everything in his power to prevent Truman from discovering the truth, manipulating the environment to keep him within the boundaries of where he lives, all in the name of ratings. When I first saw this film years ago, I thought you could literally write a book of all the topics that the film explores. Well, we're going to explore a few of them today and how society has tried to change the definition of what's important in these aspects of life. Today, I want to talk about free will, the manipulation of reality, living a true life, allowing others to script your narrative, and so much more. And I know it's a lot to wrap in one episode, but hopefully you'll see that most, if not all, of these topics really do tie together. It's easy to get distracted by the movie's theme of Big Brother is watching you, but the film's lessons land much closer to home than that. I want to start the main part of what I want to share today with this. In a sense, each of us is Truman Burbank. Society tells us who to be, what to think, how to act, what to pursue, and what we're capable of. Consider how much Truman's life parallels the lives of so many people. Like Truman, we face enormous pressure to conform to values we didn't necessarily choose. We really are aware of a wafer thin slice of reality with a lot of truth hidden from sight. We have to confront our insecurities, our concerns, our difficulties, if we want to start discovering who we've been created to be, and in turn, see reality for what it really is. So, what can we learn from the lives we see in this movie? What can we learn from Truman Burbank? Well, first, I think we need to be careful about how the world drives us to conform. The world tries to tell us this is how you need to act, this is what you need to wear, this is the kind of car you need to drive, this is the phone you need to have. The list goes on and on. In the same respect, sometimes we're content with just walking the path we're on, satisfied with where we are, rather than going out of our comfort zone to find who we're really supposed to be. For that journey to begin, we need to outgrow our conditioning. I want to say that one more time. For that journey to begin, we need to outgrow our conditioning. Here's what I mean. We can't grow if we aren't willing to let go of old habits that hold us back. We long to develop our own path, but on the other hand, we're seduced by how much society pressures us to conform. Truman's world portrays this dynamic to the extreme. For example, in an early scene in the film, Truman discloses a desire to get out of his job, out of the city, and go somewhere else. He's scolded for that and asked what's wrong with him, because others would love to have what Truman has. Though society pushes us in many respects, we are pushed even further by those we choose to associate ourselves with. If we are truly to grow, we must look past the call of the world to be just like everyone else. It's no easy feat, especially with powerful entities like corporations, the rich, the government, really set on chaining us to self serving narratives. We need to feel comfortable allowing ourselves to stray from really what is a perceived safety of being in the pack. Here's the lesson: don't tell yourself that you're stuck. In the movie, Truman's life is manipulated by people who try to create a perfect, predictable world. Sometimes this is what happens in our own lives, and we feel trapped by what's expected of us. True freedom isn't found in escaping challenges, but in living in God's truth. Are there areas in your life where you feel trapped or controlled? When we operate in our own capacity, we can be trapped and unable to escape that narrative that often has been written by other people. How can embracing God's truth set you free? Well, by breaking the chains of fear and guilt and the lies that hold you back from living fully. See, when you trust in Him, you no longer have to live in fear of the unknown. We can be free from guilt and shame, for no matter our past mistakes, we're made new in Christ. When you know God's truth, you begin to see your life as a part of His greater plan. This clarity gives you confidence to step into your purpose without hesitation, no matter what the world tells you. Another thing I think the movie teaches us is that we shouldn't be afraid to search for the truth. Now, I want to be careful here because there are lots of messages being thrown at us by the world as to what the truth is. Truman begins to notice inconsistencies in his world, leading him to question literally everything. And I think this reflects the human longing to seek truth beyond what is material or what is visible. Searching for the truth in the sense of finding God can challenge us. Why? Well, besides disrupting our comfort zones, it really can challenge how we viewed the world. Like Truman discovering the artificial nature of his world, seeking God's truth can upend long held beliefs and assumptions about our lives, our purpose, and our identity. It might lead us to sacrifice things we've known for a very long time, maybe harmful habits or toxic relationships. And this really requires us to be vulnerable because it calls us to confront any wrongdoing we might be committing, to admit weaknesses we might have, and to acknowledge our genuine need for grace. When you align with God's truth, you might face resistance from the world, especially if living in His truth goes against the way you had lived before. The Christian life requires transformation in how you live, how you love, and how you serve others. The danger lies not in the truth itself, but in the cost of facing it. Yet, the reward is far greater: a life of freedom, purpose, and eternal hope. Another lesson I think we can learn from the movie is this: faith requires courage. Truman's decision to leave and step into the unknown was a powerful act of courage. I want to compare this for a moment to the faith journey. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith as confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we don't see. Stepping into the unknown often means trusting God without knowing the full plan. It takes courage to step forward when the path is unclear. Look at how many instances in the scriptures this takes place. Abraham leaving his homeland, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, David confronting Goliath. How can you remain faithful to God when faced with pressure to compromise? Courage in faith comes from relying on God's power, not our own abilities. Faith requires courage when you're called to do something that feels risky. I think of it as courageous faith. something that sustains you through a difficult season, providing you the trust and assurance that God is working for your good. What is God calling you to that requires courage and faith? Another important thing I think we can learn from the movie is the role of community in our lives and how our faith holds us accountable in those environments. In the movie, most people in Truman's life are complicit in maintaining the illusion. However, a few people encourage him to seek the truth. This highlights the importance of surrounding ourselves with a godly community that supports and challenges us. One of my favorite readings ever is by pastor and author A.W. Tozer, The 7 Rules for Self-Discovery, long before self-help sections were a thing in bookstores. The 7 things listed in this document are for the reader to take a self-inventory and do a self-evaluation of many components in their life. They're all super important, but I think it's number 5 in the list that stands out to me, and it's this: the company we enjoy. Do you realize people in your inner circle are defining your life? Who are you spending your time with? Who are the people you're hanging out with? Who are the people you are discussing your life, your dreams, and your passions with? The people you surround yourself with kind of work a lot like moldy fruit. If you put a piece of moldy fruit next to a good piece of fruit, that good piece of fruit is eventually going to get moldy a whole lot faster because of the environment we've put it in. I heard it said this way once: if you run around with 9 broke people, you'll be number 10 before too long. Look at the last 10 people you called or exchanged text messages with. Are any of them trying to change the world? Are they people you're proud to call your closest friends? You can answer yes to that if you know you can tell them good news and they'll celebrate with you. You can answer yes if those people will hold you accountable, if they'll challenge you, if they won't accept anything but your best. And if they're people who are seeking their life's calling and doing all they can to better themselves and those around them. I'm fully convinced God puts people in our lives for a reason and for a season. What's important, and maybe the most difficult realization, is to recognize when that season is over. Too many times we really are craving validation and familiarity, and we will pull people along or kind of force relationships to happen or continue. I used the word conform earlier, and I think it was profoundly used by Rollo May when he said this: the opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it's conformity. Hebrews 10:24 and 25 says, "Let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds." Who in your life encourages your faith and holds you accountable? And how can you be that person for others? Well, while I feel like I could keep going with a ton of things from this movie, the final point I want to focus on today is this: don't be afraid to embrace the unknown. When Truman is blocked from leaving the island by land or air, only one option remains. Despite his intense fear of water, Truman takes to the open ocean. In order to discover truth, Truman musters the courage to face his greatest fear. In the same way, if we are to thrive, each of us must really face the music. If we're to effectively navigate our fear, we have to dance with the unknown. This makes his voyage all the more poignant. He literally drowns on camera before coming back to life, at which point we breathe a sigh of relief knowing Truman has pierced through the great unknown and triumphed over fear. When his boat smashes into the wall of the dome, Truman finds the exit door to this fake life that he's been living, but the producer, who was orchestrating the entire charade, tries to convince him to stay. He says this to him: "Truman, there's no more truth out there than there is in this world I created for you. The same lies, the same deceit, but in my world, you have nothing to fear." How many times have we heard that from people? How many times have we heard the devil put those words in our ears? Truman has to decide between the relative comfort of the world in which he's lived or the unknown. His life has been a lie. The truth lies ahead. So here's a question for you that might be a hard one to answer. Would you be tempted to turn back? Remember, Truman had zero knowledge of the reality beyond what he had been living. Truman literally put his entire life on the line in order to be true to himself. Choosing freedom, authenticity, and growth are daunting because they ask us to embrace the unknown. Truman's situation isn't much different than many of our own. In ways big and small, we all confront forks in the road. One road is the direction of truth and a life in Christ, while the other keeps us stuck. One road leads to enlargement, while the other one stifles us and really constricts us. Like Truman, we all face moments where we must choose between comfort and truth. Choosing truth, God's truth, isn't always easy, but it leads to real freedom, peace, and purpose. Life in Christ isn't about staying in the safety of our island, but stepping boldly into the unknown, trusting that God's plan for us is really far better than anything we could ever imagine. Remember, faith is a journey that requires courage. It's about trusting God even when we don't have all the answers, seeking His truth when it's hard to let go of old beliefs, and walking in obedience even when the path feels uncertain. You don't have to walk this journey alone. God is with you every step of the way, and He places people in your life to encourage and support you. So my final question for you today is this: which path would you take? Could you be courageous like Truman? Will you take the calling that's been placed upon your life? Maybe the uncertainty of stepping into something new or the unknown? Or will you allow yourself to stay with all you've ever known or stay in the comfortable? I encourage you today to allow God to work in your life, to step out, to not live that fake narrative that the world calls us to live, but to step into something beyond the dome, something bigger, the life that God has called you to. Well, I hope this Going to the Movies series has been meaningful to you. I know that it's taught me a ton, and it has really caused me to look at the lessons we can learn from the stories we see on film. If you haven't checked the previous ones out, I encourage you to do so. Next time, in just a few short days, we're going to be wrapping up 2024 and heading into 2025 with a very real reflection on some things God has been pouring into me lately. And I'll be sharing with you my one word for 2025. So I encourage you to check that out in just a few short days. For now, as always, thank you for your support by listening to this episode. I really do appreciate you tuning in. And I'm going to steal a line from Truman Burbank himself as I say, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. We'll see you back here next time when we'll have more for you on cue.